guys, it's Sarah, and today I'm bringing to you my favorite books that I read in 2020. I think I read about 38 books in 2020, which is fairly low for me, and honestly, I can't say I read too much that I was absolutely in love with. I gave most books about 3 stars or less, and so I feel like in 2021 I want to be more deliberate about what I choose to read. But even with that said, there were about 5 books that I really enjoyed in 2020, so let's just get into discussing those. The first book on this list is actually Chain of Gold by Clare. Have it on my trusty little cart. This is an absolutely beautiful edition. I got this from Waterstones in the UK. It was fairly expensive to get it here, but I don't regret it at all. It has art in it, and it has these beautiful runes and swords, and it's just gorgeous. Absolutely love it. And this is the first book in the Last Hour series, which is a continuation of the Infernal Devices. Essentially, we have the children of the characters of the Infernal Devices in this book. As far as the Clare book goes, I feel like this was a little bit of a slow start. There was a lot of character development, which was great because I really wanted to hear about all the different characters. But as far as like the main action and like what was going on and like who the demon was that they were fighting, it took a while to get into that. But I really like the direction that this series is going, and I'm really compelled by a lot of the relationships. I feel like Clare writes a lot of really good, like romantic, angsty teen romance, and I love to see that. I actually don't find myself really reaching for that much YA anymore, but I do feel like Clare is going to be one YA author that I still read no matter what. If you're not a Shadowhunters fan yet, I would definitely recommend maybe starting with the Infernal Devices series, because then you could just go right into this. I know there's a lot of mixed advice on how the order that you should read the Shadowhunter books, but I am partial to the Infernal Devices, so I would say read that before you read the Immortal Instruments. But I know like Emma from Ebooks would say something very different. The next book on my list is Radiance by Draven. This is an adult romance fantasy about these 2 characters that have to go through an arranged marriage as a sort of peace offering. Why can I not say that word? A peace offering between 2 kingdoms. And what's really interesting about it is that they're not actually the same species. So the main guy character, his name is Brishan, he is from a species called the Kai. They're sort of like these big warriors with blue skin and yellow eyes. And then the main female character, Ildiko, is a human. And so initially when they get married, they have a friendship, but they're not initially attracted to each other because they're literally not the same species. And so I feel like this was kind of a slow burn romance in that way, where they kind of just like really enjoyed each other's company, and then over time they ended up becoming more and more attracted to each other, which I thought was a really interesting trope to read from, because I typically lean towards like enemies to lovers, and I feel like I haven't really given friends to lovers more of a chance, and so I really enjoyed that. What I really enjoy about Draven's books is that although they are romance where they have sex scenes and there's a love story, there also is a lot of plot, so she doesn't like skimp on the fantasy world building. And this is actually the first book in a series which I intend to continue, and it kind of led me to kind of go on a Draven kick, and at this point I've already read like 3 of her books, and I just really enjoyed it. I really like plot driven romance books. I definitely want my smutty time, but I also want to feel like there's a good plot, and I feel like she definitely delivered on that. That leads me to the next book on this list, which is actually another Draven book, Entreat Me. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which I know is a little bit overdone, but I really like the way that Draven did it. Are you yawning while I'm filming? That's rude. This is supposed to be an interesting video. There's definitely more moving pieces and more characters in the way that Draven chose to tell this Beauty and the Beast retelling. That was kind of a redundant way to say that. So the beast in this story is a warlord that got cursed like a couple centuries before, and his son ends up running off with this one girl's younger sister. And so she, in an attempt to go find her sister and rescue her sister because she's unmarried and she doesn't want her to be ruined, she obviously goes to the castle where the beast is, and they basically make a proposition that she'll be his sort of mistress. I'm doing it really bad, I'm explaining it. But like I said, what I love about Draven's books is that they are plot driven while having really good romance in them. And so I really liked the 2 like love interests in this book. I feel like they both had really interesting personalities, and I really liked how they came together, and the sex scenes were really good. And yeah, I just really recommend Draven as an author. That's the point I'm trying to make. I'm kind of rambling, but yeah. The next book on my list is actually a sci-fi novella called This Is How You Lose the Time War. I feel like a lot of booktubers have mentioned this in the past couple of years because it is just so good. It's such a short book, but it also just packs such a punch. How do you explain this? It is about these 2 spies from opposing sides, and they also are time travelers, and they start writing each other love letters, and they leave them in different places throughout time. The writing style is just absolutely breathtaking. The way that they write these letters to each other is so romantic, and it's just really poetic and flowy, and the sci-fi elements are a little bit hard to understand initially, but as you keep reading, they just kind of fall into place, and you don't ever fully understand the Time War that they're fighting, but you kind of just like become okay with it because you're so obsessed with this like sapphic romance. And I don't know, it was just really beautiful. It's definitely a book that I could see myself rereading. And finally, my favorite book that I read last year, which will come as no surprise to anyone because the few times I did upload a video last year, I did mention this book, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This book is about this girl named January who finds out that before her father passed away, he was having an affair and he left her this beach house, and she is a romance author that's experiencing writer's block, so she decides to spend the summer at this beach house writing. And in the beach house next to hers, there is another author named Gus who she actually went to grad school with, and she always thought of him as her rival because he is a literary fiction writer, and obviously with her being a romance author, she feels like he doesn't respect her genre. And so they kind of make a tentative friendship. I mean, they bicker, but they're like kind of friends, and they challenge each other to write each other's genres because he's also experiencing writer's block. So he's like, I feel like writing a romance book would be really easy, and she's like, you're so stuffy, I'm sure I could write your literary fiction. And so they swap genres to see what would happen by the end of the summer, and they also include each other on like research trips. So he kind of shows her what it takes to write literary fiction and takes her on these trips of like how to do research, and then she takes him on dates to show him like romance and how you would go about writing like realistic romance books, if that makes sense. And so it sounds like it's a lighthearted plot, but like I said, because she's dealing with the death of her father and like not knowing a lot about him, there's a lot of like family revelation, and then Gus also has his own past. And so I just feel like the emotional connection that the two characters had was really special, and the writing style was really good. And I actually read this all in one sitting, which is not really common for me anymore these days. I just feel like I don't really have the time to dedicate it to reading in like one session like that, but I just was so obsessed with this that I think I stayed up to like 4 a.m. reading it. Sorry, I keep picking dog hair off my lip. I kind of lost my train of thought because Billy was moving around, but basically what I'm just trying to say is that it was written really well. I really liked it. I saw a few people say that they thought it was overhyped, but I just really disagree. I feel like it's not often that you find a romance book that has so much emotional substance as well as entertainment. Like, I laughed and cried while reading this book. I just really enjoyed it. But yeah, that pretty much brings me to the end of my favorites of 2020. Like I said, there weren't that many books that I was obsessed with last year. I'm trying really hard this year to be more deliberate and intentional about what I'm reading so that I can enjoy more things. If you guys can think of any books that you think I would enjoy, please recommend them down below, as well as telling me what your favorite books of 2020 were. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day. Searching for bases, covering up the hole. I'll fight for your love.